And the president of Mexico taking aim at Republicans again. This time, he slammed Florida Governor Ron DeSantis over his immigration policies after his 2024 launch, saying, quote, hopefully Hispanics in Florida will wake up and not give him one single vote, to not vote for those who persecute migrants, those who don't respect migrants. Niall Stanage, White House columnist for The Hill, joins us now. So now, as you know, Governor DeSantis won as much as 58% of the Latino vote in the Florida election last year, according to one exit poll. So what do you think is going on here?
Well, I think one thing that is inadvisable is President Obrador meddling in American politics. I don't think that's a great idea in any situation for someone from one nation to meddle in the internal politics of another. But clearly the Mexican president has an issue, to say the very least, with Governor DeSantis' policies. Those policies include a desire to build the wall, an opposition to so-called sanctuary cities. And of course, Governor DeSantis did do those famous or infamous migrant flights to Martha's Vineyard last September. So there is legitimate opposition from the Mexican president to the kind of immigration policies that Governor DeSantis espouses. But whether it's advisable to do this is a whole other question.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. So a new CNN poll finds President Biden leading his Democratic opponents by a very wide margin, but it also reveals just a third of voters overall see a second term for President Biden as a step forward or a triumph for the country. So there's research that shows 49% of Black Americans say President Biden's policies have made no difference in their lives. Now, Black voters helped Biden win the White House. So how concerning is this information for the president's team?
It's very concerning indeed. Black voters are critical to any Democratic president, and they were particularly critical to President Biden even as he sought the Democratic nomination in 2020. The issue here really, Kelly, is the lack of enthusiasm across the board for President Biden. That is a big problem. In 2024, it's not just about winning the vast majority of the Black vote. It's about getting people to turn out in high numbers. If those voters do not feel enthusiastic about the president, do not feel that his record has really made a difference to their lives, then he's potentially in very serious trouble. Now, it's possible that those voters will come out to defeat whomever the Republican nominee is. But if you're the incumbent president, you don't want to be reliant upon that. You want those voters to be coming out proactively to vote for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Those are great points. So despite President Biden's margin among Democrats, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. holding steady at 20%. What do you make of that now?
It's a fascinating finding, I think, Kelly. On the one hand, clearly, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has one of the most famous last names in American politics. I think that surprisingly high rating speaks primarily to a dissatisfaction among Democratic voters with President Biden and a willingness to look at other options. And in fact, when that poll broke down reasons why people were drawn to Mr. Kennedy, a number of them did cite his last name, his family connections. But, I mean, obviously, hardcore supporters of Kennedy would argue that he's providing a real alternative. I see it more as that Democratic dissatisfaction.
So on the other side of the aisle, earlier this week, you wrote about the Hill's 10 GOP rankings. Governor Ron DeSantis has officially entered the race. Do you think this is still basically a two-man contest between him and former President Trump? Or do you think some of the other candidates polling much lower now may have an opportunity?
They have a little bit of an opportunity because Governor DeSantis' launch did not go well. The instantly infamous Twitter mess up with the Twitter Spaces thing was a problem, especially for a candidate who foregrounds the idea that he's the competent one. It was an incompetent launch, and that's bad. Having said all of that, Governor DeSantis is a good deal ahead of the chasing pack. He lags former President Trump by a very significant margin, but he is still, at this point, the most serious rival to Trump for the Republican nomination.
All right, Niall Stanage, thank you as always.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.